things we're required to like as citizens in a civilized society, one item reigns supreme and amasses love even stronger than K-pop. And that's coffee. If you're not in some sort of cult that genuflects every single time coffee is mentioned, then you face confusion and questions like, what's wrong with you? Try telling a coffee lover there's something more important than artisanal beans, and you better have a head start, because they're quick and caffeinated. But it's true. Even to Java junkies, there's something more important than just coffee beans: water. If you trace back basically anything far enough, you'll discover that it'll almost always boil back down to water. Such a simple substance, only comprised of two elements, but at the exact same time, it's the life source for everything. So today, let's first dive into our intertwining past with water. Next, let's swim through our present situation before finally taking a look at the impact water has in our lives. Because as the UN Development Program explains, without water, there is no life. Even though it's always shaped our lives, it's helpful to look at water in the context of before, during, and after the Industrial Revolution. Before, well, needless to say, humans weren't really sure on how to clean or use water, meaning much of what they drank was fairly dangerous. It carried various different viruses, infectious worms, and even parasites. Historian Andrea Zupic says that people living in the pre-industrial revolution era had a fairly bad sense of personal hygiene, with accessibility to clean water being a major contributing factor. When the Puritans began to settle into New England, small grain and sawmills powered by water currents began to dot the landscape, eventually snowballing into the Great Industrial Revolution, an era in the mid-1700s when machines started to populate the world, according to a 2018 Yale University article. And as people started to understand the vast potential that water held, they began to use it more and more frequently, since, well, they relied on it for more than just drinking and farming. One major achievement during this time was of the steam train. Steam trains boomed in the 19th century. They quickly became the most popular way to travel across the country, and also the best way to transport country-powering goods like flour, oil, and livestock. For a while, these trains, literally and figuratively, carried our entire economy on their tracks, powered by water. After the Industrial Revolution, however, our need for water skyrocketed, while our respect for it declined. You see, overuse of water was rampant, and our clean water was being treated as a dumping site, instead of garnering the respect it really deserved. So this in turn led to the passage of the 1972 Clean Water Act, according to the National Wildlife Federation, our first real attempt at trying to enshrine some sort of respect for water by everyday people and businesses alike. But it's hard to legislate respect for anything, and protecting our most valuable resource remains a constant battle. So let's see where that battle is today. One of America's most critical waterways, the Colorado River, runs through 7 states and supplies multiple reservoirs with water that gets transported to 40 million people every single day. At the same time, it also supports $1.4 trillion in economic activity, according to the Nature Conservancy in September of 2022. That's 8% of the entire US's gross domestic product relying on a single source of water. But our reservoirs are currently being exploited well past their limit. For instance, take America's largest reservoir, Lake Mead, which has had its water levels plummeting recently. Last recorded in 2023 by Lakes Online to only be 1,051 feet, hundreds of feet lower than it was previously. This was Lake Mead in 1983. Now, this is Lake Mead today. And as these water levels are lowering, farmers are also desperately trying to fight for their water rights. You see, back in my home state of good old California, we grow 11.2% of the entire nation's crops, according to the US Department of Agriculture. But at the same time, we are going through one of the worst droughts in human history, meaning that when all of our farmers fully exhaust our water supplies, 11.2% of the entire nation's crops will disappear, along with every single almond, artichoke, pistachio, and clove of garlic. But the government's bad management of water doesn't stop there, and instead extends into areas like Flint, Michigan, a majority Black city that faced a massive water crisis in 2014 that is still present today. You see, their once clean water was contaminated with lead due to an unfair, systemic change in their water source and the lack of necessary maintenance for this critical infrastructure. And due to the government's flippant approach on how water should be treated, businesses have been messing with supplies as well. One major example being fracking or hydraulic fracturing. And though it is true that fracking does support majority of the US's energy, at the same time, the dangerous chemicals involved in the process often leak into pools of nearby groundwater, poisoning the taps of nearby residents. One video even went viral, showing how poisonous the water was just by how you could set it ablaze. So, seeing how we continue to mishandle water to this very day, what exactly are the consequences of doing so? And they stretch far beyond than just running out of coffee. In the recent years, as our overexploitation grows worse and worse, water has now become a privilege for the wealthy. In the city of Basra, Iraq, their government there had been mishandling their water so badly that they had been directly polluting it with raw sewage for decades, sending a total of 118,000 people to the hospital, according to the Human Rights Watch in July of 2019. And while the common people suffered from the lack of clean water, the rich and wealthy politicians managed to keep their sources clean and pristine by purchasing clean yet expensive water. So when thousands flooded the streets in concern and anger for their loved ones, they were brutally gunned down, killing 12 and injuring dozens. So seeing the immense consequences we have brought upon ourselves, what exactly are we doing to try and alleviate this whole situation? Well, for one, more areas around the world are becoming more aware of the need to value and manage their water usage. Take, for instance, Cape Town, a town in South Africa housing 4 million people, when in 2014 they faced a massive water crisis, where they were on the verge of reaching day 0, the day when all of their water would completely shut off, leaving 4 million people to either queue for water for hours every single day, or to die of thirst. But instead of panicking and thinking irrationally, the people of Cape Town decided to work together. They decided to combine and collaborate their efforts. And so just within 3 years, they were able to cut their daily water usage by half, according to Cape Etc. in March of 2018. And even though steps like these are only small drops of water in a large bucket, they are still necessary for a significant change that is critical to protecting our water. So today, we first dove into our intertwining past with water. Next, we swam through our present situation before finally taking a look at the impact water has in our lives. And without understanding how integral it is to everything we do, we will never be able to fully appreciate water. At least, not as much as we appreciate coffee. But a day 0 for coffee could be a very real thing. And once everyone's brought to this realization, maybe that'll be the first wave in a ripple effect. Thank you.